edit mode, go down here, click, and go into edit mode. And you can see the object comes up with or without something highlighted. I just press A, and you'll see that only the object that we're editing is now selected by A. I'll just get rid of that second object so it's not confusing. Go into edit object mode again and delete it. Back into edit mode. Now in edit mode you'll see that the appearance is slightly different. There's a bit more detail on the object. There's a dot in the middle of one of the faces here, and if you look carefully, there's a dot on each of the faces. And that relates to the tools down here. If I hover over that, at the moment we've got the face select tool selected. So we're selecting the whole face of an object. So if I deselect with A and then click somewhere, I get a face of an object selected, and then dragging with my arrows I can move the face in and out. Like that. The whole face moves and the object stretches with it along that face. Next one along is edge select. If I click that and then click, you'll see that I get just one of the edges of the object. And if I drag that, the edge moves. You can always press Ctrl Z to revert. So let's revert all that back to where we started. Now the third one is the vertex select. If I click that, you'll see that the object now has visible points at the corners, and those are the vertices. Again, if I move those, you'll see that just the vertex moves. Ctrl Z. So okay, let's go back to let's stay in vertex mode for a moment, and I'm going to press one of the number pads so that we get one of the fixed views looking directly at the side of the object, and we'll see what happens when we select and scale and rotate and grab just vertices. Now to select multiple vertices, I hold down Shift, and this would apply to faces or edges, and I click them in turn. That's one way of doing it. You see I've now got all 4 vertices selected, and effectively I've got the whole face selected. A quicker way of doing this, which is to use B on the keyboard. When I press B, I'll be able to drag with the left mouse button over the object, and I'll select anything that falls within the rectangle that I've dragged out. So I press B, and I get cross lines, drag out, rectangle, and I've selected, well, what have I selected? So let's have a look. So if I press my middle mouse button and rotate it round, you'll see that I've got just the 4 vertices on the face I was looking at. That can be useful because you may only want to select certain things. You'll only select what is visible under the cursor. But suppose if in this angle I wanted to select all the vertices of the object. So if I click that, you'll see that my view has changed, and I can actually see in a sort of shaded view the back face of the object with its vertices. If I press B now, and notice B always adds to the selection. So you don't have to hold down Shift or anything. If you press B, you can always drag over and add things. So I press B. Now the vertices that I selected before have been selected, and so have the ones at the back this time. So if I now press S, for example, I can now scale that just like I did the whole object, because I selected the whole object effectively. Let's just deselect that and go back. Just now select 2 vertices. We press S and those objects scale in a rather interesting way. It's actually as if they're just moving together along one axis. And why is that? Just press Escape to get out of that. When you scale things, they will scale around a certain point. In this case, it's where the arrows are, the coloured movement arrows. But you can in fact change that. So if we go down to this control here, the pivot center for rotation and scaling, there's a number of different options. And at the moment, what we've got is the median point in operation. So it's the kind of point that's in the middle of everything that's selected. And but you can also go, for example, to 3D cursor. And my 3D cursor was that crosshair thing I mentioned before. Now if I scale to the 3D cursor, press S, because the vertices scale down towards that point instead of the point that's between them. And then if I change it again back to, let's say, active element, you can see that this face of the object is shaded, and that's the active element over here. So the 3D cursor, the scaling point snaps to that vertex, and if I do scale now, things just scale into that one. It's worth playing around with those with different pivot points selected and see just what effect it has. Let's have a look at how you can start to work on different parts of the object. Before I selected the vertices individually, but might have been quicker to use the face. So if I click face, and I'm going to deselect the button, which, well, I'm going to limit the view to just the faces I can see, which makes life easier, so don't select things behind by accident. Click on this face here, and if I do SZ 0.5, it's half the size in the vertical direction. SZ2, and it reverts to where it was.